Good morning, everyone. The clock on my computer says 11 o'clock, so we'll kick off. I have to read a statement to start with, as I usually do. I am obliged to inform you that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Members of the public are able to hear and view the papers displayed during the broadcast of the meeting. This meeting is being held using remote technology, and should any Cabinet members experience any technical difficulties during the meeting, they should immediately contact Abby Sylvester on 01743 258 617. Councillors are requested to mute their microphones unless asked to speak. The chat function may be used to indicate the desire to speak. As leader, I will interpret the Council's existing standing orders in light of the requirements of remote participation, with advice from the monitoring officer prior to making any ruling. At the start of the meeting, I will ask members of the Cabinet to confirm their presence and any interests. I will ask everyone that speaks during the meeting, including members of the Cabinet, group leaders or officers, to introduce themselves before they speak. Now, before the meeting starts, I would like to provide an update on COVID-19. The latest figures show that over 80 people in Shropshire have died in local hospitals and a further 50 in either care homes or the local community. Every death is a tragedy for a local family, and I would like to express the sincere sympathy of everyone at Shropshire Council for all those affected at this difficult time. Shropshire Council are here to help, and if we can give anyone any support, please contact our helpline for assistance. I would also like to pay tribute to the work of a huge number of people locally who have supported our communities throughout this difficult time. We all recognise the important role of the NHS, but I, on behalf of the Council, would also include all those who work in social services and provide care either in care homes or for people in their own homes. There are also a huge number of people working in local shops and supermarkets to provide food and supplies. There is an army of cleaning and waste disposal staff who have continued to work in difficult times. And of course, we must recognise the role of the police and the army in providing support throughout the whole of our county. Thank you everyone for the work you are doing. Looking forward, it will be important to get the economy of Shropshire working to its full potential as quickly as possible. The Council will continue to push forward with its capital programme and work to improve the infrastructure of Shropshire and also to support all education, training and employment opportunities. It will be more important than ever that we provide a lead to our local communities and not shy away from making the difficult decisions needed to allow Shropshire to flourish. We now move to item 1 of the agenda. Item 1 are apologies, and I believe we have apologies from Gwilym Butler. And item 2 will be a roll call and disclosable pecuniary interests. So as I go through the roll call, I do remind members about declaring pecuniary interests. The wording is, members are reminded to disclose any pecuniary interests in any matters to be discussed, which is not included in the register of interests, and to leave the meeting prior to the matter being discussed. I will now read out each Cabinet's name in turn and ask them to confirm their presence and state if they have any interests. So we start Councillor Lee Chapman. I know Lee has indicated he's here, so I'm assuming Lee's here. Steve Charmley, I know, is present.
Yes, I'm here, nothing to declare.
Dean Carroll.
Present, nothing to declare.
Steve
Hello,
Davenport.
Yes, Peter. I'm here, nothing to declare.
And I can hear Lee now. Thank you, Lee. You're okay?
Apologies, Peter, I couldn't get my microphone unmuted. I am here and nothing to declare.
Right. Rob Macy. I have got a message from Rob saying he's got a slight technical hitch, but he will be joining as soon as possible. David Minery.
I confirm I'm here, Peter, and nothing to declare.
Leslie Picton.
Present, Peter. Nothing to declare.
Ed Potter.
I'm here and nothing to declare.
Right, so that's all the members of Cabinet who are present. Right, we move on to item 3, the minutes. I move that the minutes of the previous Cabinet meeting held on the 4th of March, as circulated with the agenda papers, be signed as a correct record. And I will ask Councillor Steve Charmley to second that.
Yeah, happy to second, Leader.
Right, unless anybody indicates differently, I will eventually sign those, but they will be treated as a true record. So I now accept these minutes as the record, unless anyone indicates differently. There are no indications differently, so we will accept those as a true record. We now move on to public questions, and in accordance with Procedure Rule 14, we will now deal with the questions from the members of the public in accordance with revised procedure rules. I will now read out questions received from members of the public and invite the relevant portfolio holders to respond. The first question is from Mark Fermor, Chair of Shropshire Cycling Hub, and the question is as follows. The following questions that I asked at your meeting on 27th of February 2020 were not answered, except for some positive aspirations about active travel in Shrewsbury, which are welcomed. And I would now appreciate an answer. Does the Council agree that achieving zero carbon Britain means a shift in priority towards active travel by foot and cycle? Is the Council committed to investing in cycling to achieve aspirations set by the UK Government to make cycling and walking a natural choice for shorter journeys? At Shropshire Cycle Hub, we would like to work with the Council and others to achieve a 5-fold increase in cycling by 2025, appropriate for zero carbon Shropshire. Does the Council support this aspiration? Does the Council agree that to achieve the change, it must invest in infrastructure at least to the level advocated by Sustrans and others at £34 per resident per annum and start this year? And in brackets it says £12 million per annum. What is the Council's existing budget for new cycling infrastructure this year? Will the Council ensure that no new highway schemes are approved that require use of the Council's scarce resources until a new budget for cycling infrastructure has been established, appropriate for climate and health emergencies we face? And now I'm going to ask Councillor Steve Davenport to respond.
Yes, hi Leader, I'm Mark Fermor. We've got 2 A4 sides of answers here, so I'm going to take part of it and the rest will be published today, and I will email all the answers to Mark Fermor after this meeting. So part of the answer, the Council's position is that this is through the North West Relief Road, by the way. The Council's position is that by diverting through traffic away from the town centre, completion of the North West Relief Road provides the opportunity for effective investment in improvements to public transport and active transport modes in a way consistent with the objectives of Shrewsbury Big Town Plan. Shropshire Council is already bidding into a range of government grant funding, which, if successful, will provide extensive town-wide electric bus services, e-cargo bikes, and potential for the reallocation of road space or the establishment of low emission zones, which will allow us to respond positively to the new reality of post-CV COVID-19. This demonstrates the work being undertaken and direction of travel taken by this council. The rest of the answers are similar and in vein of a lot of the questions today. So these I will forward to Mark, and as I said, will be posted online today.
This is Councillor Peter Nutton again. Yes, I can confirm I have seen quite a long answer, several pages of answer, and that will be published, but it would be inappropriate to try and read it all out at the moment, but there's lots of information available that will be published. Right, question 2 is from Rob Wilson, and I will read the question. when the COVID-19 lockdown begins to lift, people will want to return to our town centres to support local businesses. What plans does Shropshire Council have to temporarily remove motor traffic from our town centres so that people are able to maintain social distancing as directed by the Chief Medical Officer, Chris Whitty? And I'm going to ask Councillor Steve Charmley to respond. Councillor Steve Charmley.
Thank you, Leader. The response I've got mirrors similar questions later on in Cabinet. Shropshire Council recognises this issue. Currently, the Council is supporting businesses on many fronts to respond to COVID-19, whether this is supporting small business with grants, business rate relief, flooding grants, working with chambers of commerce and local enterprise partnerships. Key staff have been diverted to ensure that financial support is provided. Further, the newly formed Community Reassurance Team is supporting in town centres and wider communities on a number of issues, with staff redeployed to assist and support. Planning work is underway in respect of when government's lockdown begins to ease or cease, and a number of scenarios are being considered. This may be in the Council's approach to public transport, phasing opening of car parks to park and ride, to wider promotions for town centres in association with business improvement districts. How central government will approach any relaxation or cessation of lockdown is not yet clear, and yet it's clear that there will be adjustments on how people and the council operate, and this will be integral to any development work and town centre support. There is a balance between adherence to any requirements that government require when lockdown is eased or ceased, public confidence in utilising transport in town centres and supporting our local economies. Discussions are underway and scenarios are being developed so that the council can move at pace should it be required once the advice from government is received. This development work will consider a number of issues, and at present these discussions across a wide range of issues are underway with partners such as bids, local and town clerks are all underway, and currently no firm proposals have been developed.
Okay, thank you. Can I remind members to mute their microphones if they're not speaking, because there is a bit of background noise for one or two people. Moving on to question 3 from Joanna Blackman, and I'll read the question. In the light of the new reality we find ourselves in and the prospects of continued uncertainty in the fossil fuel market, will the Cabinet propose to the Pension Committee that Shropshire County Pension Fund divests from funds which include fossil fuels? And I'm going to ask Councillor Dean Carroll to respond. Councillor Dean Carroll.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Joanna, for the question. Pensions Committee have responsibility delegated from Council for Shropshire County Pension Fund investment decisions, and this question should be directed there, as it is not for the executive of this council to direct them. Cabinet has no role or jurisdiction in their business. To do otherwise is ultra vires. My understanding is that this issue continues to be raised at Pensions Committee and is continually revisited. The fund's investment decisions are taken within the framework set by the regulations and statutory guidance issued by the Ministry for Housing, Communities and Local Government. Accordingly, the fund's primary duty is to pay pensions, and the fund's approach to environmental, social and corporate governance issues is implemented with this duty in mind. The fund's approach to responsible investment, of which climate change is one component, is set out in the investment strategy statement and further in the stewardship code statement. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next item is from Jackie Jones, and I will read the question out. On a list of Shropshire Council priorities, where does the climate emergency sit? Given the emergency, do you think it is reasonable to devote only 0.06% of your staff resources to the Climate Task Force? And why is there no representation on the group for some of the most important sectors, especially transport. I'm going to ask Councillor Dean Carroll again to respond. Councillor Carroll.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Jackie, for the question. Climate change has been adopted as a key corporate priority and a theme that underpins the Council's direction of travel as an organisation. Whilst the staff of the Climate Task Force represent only a small proportion of the Council's total staff in numerical terms, they are certainly not working alone and are supported by an internal officer group drawn from services across the Council, including a number of key staff from highways and transport. One of the early priorities for the task force has been to start to embed climate change considerations in the Council's governance systems, including committee reports, procurement and investment decisions, so that it becomes normalised as a consideration for all Council staff. This has been reinforced by organising carbon literacy training for key staff from a wide range of Council services.
Okay, thank you very much. Question 5 is from Mike Streetley, and the question is, the survival of many town centre businesses will depend on a rapid increase in footfall once the main lockdown period ends. What preparations is the council making to ensure that there is more space immediately available to pedestrians, otherwise cramped onto narrow pavements, in order to ensure that our town centres can operate as fully as possible while social distancing rules continue in force, currently forecast to continue for many months? And will this include widespread imposition of temporary pedestrianisation? And I'm going to ask Councillor Steve Chalmley to respond. Councillor Chalmley. Steve, are you there?
Yeah, sorry, Leader. I didn't have the, I couldn't unmute the mic. I seem to have lost my response to this, and I can't get it on the screen now because I'm live.
Would you like me to do it?
Have you got it, Steve?
Yeah.
Okay, Steve. So this is Councillor Steve Davenport. Steve Davenport then.
Shropshire Council recognises the issue. Currently, the council is supporting businesses on many fronts in response to COVID-19, whether this be supporting small businesses with grants, businesses rate relief, flooding grants, working with the Chamber of Commerce, local enterprise partnerships, key staff have been diverted to ensuring that financial partnerships and support is provided. Further, the newly formed community reassurance team is supporting in town centres and wider communities across the number of issues, with staff redeployed to assist and support. Planning work is underway in respect of when the government's lockdown begins to ease or cease, and a number of scenarios are being considered. This may be in the council's approach to public transport, car parks. Currently, all Shropshire car parks are free of charge, and park and ride, to the wider promotions for the town centres and associations with business improvements in association with bids. How central government will approach any relaxation or cessation of the lockdown is not yet clear, and it's clear that there will be amends to how people and the council operate, and this will have an integral part and development work for the town centre support. This development work will consider a number of issues and present these discussions across the wide range of issues are underway with partners such as the bid, the local and the town clerks are under. Currently, no firm proposals have yet been developed. Thank you. Okay,
thank you very much. Question 6 is for, and I hope I get the pronouncement right, Slawomir Fafer. And the question is, as a result of COVID-19, what general support has Shropshire been giving to care and residential homes, and in particular, how many peoples is it supporting, and has Shropshire been able to provide PPE support and community carers for all support for all community carers? I'm going to ask Councillor Dean Carroll to respond. Dean?
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Slavomir, for the question. Shropshire Council are working closely with colleagues in Health and Telford and Wrekin Council, and Shropshire Council are hosting a system-wide emergency PPE request site. This is a platform for providers to request PPE when they are in urgent need of stock and their usual PPE supply chain has not been able to meet their planned delivery. Providers and individuals providing care and support can submit a request form which is prioritised based on need and will then be given a time slot to collect a pack of PPE from the Shire Hall on set days.
Okay, thank you very much. Question 7 is from Adam Ship, and there's quite a long preamble which I'm not intending to read. It will be available on the internet for everyone. Part 1, I don't think it's appropriate for us to respond to, but so item 2 is, do they believe that the Shropshire economy has suffered due to extreme flooding and droughts over the last 2 years? And then part 3 has any economic assessment been carried out to quantify the effect of these recent events on businesses in Shropshire? Is one underway, or is one planned, and if so, will it be made public? And part 4 is addressed to me. Mr. Nutting, in light of these quotes, will you use your considerable influence to move with haste to decarbonise Shropshire Council and set a firm date for carbon neutrality? Well, parts 2 and 3, I'm going to ask Councillor Steve Charmley to respond to, and then part 4, I will ask Dean Carroll to respond to. So I'll start with Councillor Steve Charmley. So Steve.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, we'll take the 2 questions together, if I may. The recent floods earlier this year affected large parts of Shropshire and were the worst for 20 years. An impact survey for businesses was undertaken for a short period at the peak of the flooding to understand the business and economic impacts. The survey was responded to mostly by businesses in Shrewsbury, with 185 responses were received, over half of which were in the retail sector. A summary of the headlines from this survey tell us that less than a third of businesses were able to operate during as normal during the floods, and a quarter of businesses closed completely. Nearly 3/4 of businesses expected to be open as normal within a few days of responding to the survey. For a significant minority, premise damage was sufficient to delay business as normal for longer. Almost 1 in 10 businesses were forced to close or reduce operations and did not expect to be back up and running properly for a month or longer. 97% of businesses reported a loss of trade during the floods, and the total estimated cost from this loss was £7 to £8 million. Total cost for each day of disruption was estimated at £0.9 million. This was a simple survey of 185 businesses who chose to respond, but it helped give us an indication of the business and economic impact from the February floods. We've used these figures to help us focus on local support and have fed into government via our MPs and March's LEP to ask for more support locally and to help recover from these floods and to prepare for future events that may occur. We will be preparing further more detailed economic analysis of COVID-19 impacts to inform our recovery plan, and the flooding impact data will feed into these, given many businesses have been impacted by both of them. Thank you.
Okay, so Dean, can you respond to part 4?
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Adam. Yes, Shropshire Council approved a climate strategy framework at its meeting on the 19th of December 2019, which establishes the objective of net zero carbon performance for the council by 2030. Officers have started to embed climate change across the council's governance systems and are currently developing a strategy and action plan to identify projects and initiatives which will continue the good progress which is already being made towards decarbonising the council's services.
Okay, thank you very much. So that deals with questions from the public. Item 5 is questions from members. 7 questions have been received. The first question is from Councillor Andy Boddington. I don't know if Councillor Waddington's online and able to ask the
I'm here,
question.
Peter.
Right, Andy, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, sir. What plans is the council putting in place to support the retail economy of Shropshire, including in the rural market towns, after lockdown ends?
And I'm going to ask Councillor Steve Charmley to respond. Steve?
Thank you, Leader. Yes, currently the council is dealing with over 1,400 grant applications to support the retail, hospitality and leisure sector across the county. We've given just over £37 million in support to businesses in this sector, with grants of 10 and 25,000 depending on their rateable value. This is a huge task which involves staff from across finance, business rates and economic growth to give much needed support, advice and reassurance during these very difficult and financially challenging times that business is facing. Our focus has been on getting this much needed grant funding to those businesses in the short term. This will help sustain and provide some resilience to businesses in our towns across the county. We've been working with partners including the Marches Left, Federation of Small Businesses, Business Improvement Districts, Chambers of Commerce, central government and other stakeholders to explore what additional support may be available to help businesses, retailers and leisure sector through this very difficult time. The Marches Left board, of which Shropshire councillors are part, has recently agreed to allocate funding to support businesses and tourism, recognising the impact on this sector and its importance for Shropshire in the wider Marches area. More details will be provided on this soon. As well as grant funding for businesses, we are keen to provide particular focus on those towns that were affected by flooding, as well as the current crisis, Ludlow, Bridgnorth and Shrewsbury especially. We recognise the innovation and resilience of our business community, and a recent example of this is a particular initiative led by Shrewsbury Bid and My Shrewsbury to create Support Shrewsbury, a digital platform offering a single website where businesses can sell products, experiences, gift vouchers to customers, providing much needed cash flow into the businesses. Here in Oswestry Bid have set up suppliers and services page on their website to support businesses to promote services and products that are available to support other businesses and communities during the difficult period. Examples have included grocery deliveries, shop supplies, takeaways and home deliveries, wellbeing and book delivery services, DIY and home supplies, care and essential services and trader support. We also have local economic growth strategies out for consultation until 22nd of May. And these provide a platform for the key market towns. Whilst these are likely to need to change significantly and flex as we emerge from the crisis, they provide a mechanism and framework to work together and support our businesses. Whilst we have started to use the data, impacts and trends to pull together ideas for the recovery phase after the lockdown starts to be lifted, we will share this over the coming weeks. We must continue to focus on pushing out financial support and help with the immediate impacts of those eligible businesses.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Andy, you okay with that?
I'm okay. Just quickly on it, I think you added the point that I wanted to clarify, that you'll keep us councillors in the loop, but also it's very important to keep town councils in the loop as we plan for recovery, because we need all the effort we can get, and Chambers of Commerce too.
I'm sure we'll do that. I'll make sure that happens, and I'm sure Steve will agree to that as well. Right. Okay. Right. Question 2 is from David Vasmer. David, are you available?
Yes, Leader, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Right, fire away.
What support has Shropshire Council been able to give to care homes, and what plans does the council have if the safe care and residence becomes compromised as a result of care staff being forced to self-isolate?
Okay, we'll take them one at a time then. Right, so Councillor Dean Carroll will respond. Dean?
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, David, for the question. This is quite a multifaceted question, so I'll answer each part in turn. Firstly, coming on to the general support that's offered. Significant work is going on in Shropshire to ensure the support and well-being of all our care homes, their residents and their staff. We are working closely with system partners and Shropshire Partners in Care to ensure that up-to-date information goes out so that we can be sure every care home, and indeed all domiciliary care providers as well, are kept up to date with all national guidance and local information and news. In addition, we are making welfare calls to every single provider. We have a team dedicated to care homes. These welfare calls are for the regular support of care homes and to ensure that they have sufficient staffing and resources, and also just to check that they are coping with the current crisis and that we are aware of any significant issues and risks that we can then assist with. While there is an outbreak in a care home, public health lead on the welfare calls to make sure that they have support from the right experts at the right time. Shropshire Partners in Care is also regularly contacting providers across the market, and any issues are reported to the local authority so that we can also ensure help is getting to where it's most needed. We're also checking in with care homes around their status as to whether they are adhering to safe practice in the restriction of visitors, and a care home's closure report is submitted daily to the Local Health Resilience Partnership. Providers can send questions in to us and call us at any time, and we are responding to queries through commissioning, contracts, public health and first point of contact, that is FPOC, and social work teams, as well as the adult social care business team. We respond to every inquiry individually, and on a daily basis we also compile and update frequently asked questions for the care market across Shropshire, Telford and Wrekin, and these are hosted on Shropshire Partners in Care website and linked to both councils' websites. They include lots of information to help providers, especially around areas such as personal protective equipment, PPE, and access to food and infection control advice. For information, the link is www.spic.co.uk/resource-category/COVID-19-guidance. And that will be included in the response to the question, which is sent to you and published on the website. Coming on to specific system support, we also have a system-wide care market task and finish group dedicated to the support of the market in general. This group involves officers from both authorities and from the CCGs and includes experts on infection prevention and control, so we can ensure the entire market gets support around this vital area. They also escalate any significant issues up through the system to Silver and Gold Command to make sure that everyone who needs to be made or be aware of key risks and decisions is informed and involved. Finally, on the issue of risk assessments, we already have a robust risk assessment process for care homes, which helps us to identify general risks for care homes. We've used this robust process and enhanced it to cover both the standard care home management processes and then ensure all risks regarding COVID-19 are covered so that we can clearly identify care homes who are particularly at risk and make sure that proactive support is put in place. This standard risk management matrix draws information from the CQC, concerns report, complaints, financial risks, size of contract, whether there are any safeguarding or multi-agency processes in place. We are cited on how many confirmed and suspected cases of COVID-19 are in a care home daily from information which comes from Public Health England, and are now adding information from the National Bed Tracker, which will show us how many employees may be off work or self-isolating, so we can add this into our risk management considerations. We then meet regularly with Public Health to ensure that we get the right support where it is needed and prioritise care homes who may be most at risk. We are working closely with system partners, including Public Health England, the NHS locally, and Shropshire Partners in Care to monitor and support our care homes and to ensure that up-to-date information goes out so that we can be sure every care home and indeed all domiciliary care providers are kept up to date with all national guidance and local information and news. Outbreaks in care homes are required to be reported to Public Health England, who support each home through the outbreak, in partnership with Shropshire Council and the local NHS partners. This includes offering guidance on infection control, testing for staff and residents, and PPE.
Okay, thank you, Dean. David, if you want a quick comeback, we'll allow that, but not long questions.
Okay, thank you, Leader. Yes, thanks for that detailed answer, Dean. I'd just like to ask one question: is have the possibility of care homes or domiciliary care providers going out of business being higher up your agenda at the moment? And I wondered if you could answer that for me.
Thank you, David. The stability of the care market is always a key consideration for us. Obviously, it wouldn't be appropriate in this venue to talk about specific providers, but if you have any specific concerns, please feel free to bring them to myself, to Andy Begley, the Director for Adult Social Care, or to Tanya Miles, the Assistant Director.
Okay, thank you. Right, now, David, you've got a second question, so would you like to do your second question, please? You're on mute, David. I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. Given the changes to people's lives that will result from the coronavirus pandemic and the likelihood of a severe recession, can the leader justify pressing on with the North West Relief Road when a much smaller investment in traffic reduction measures, extra cycling provision and better buses will reduce congestion in Shrewsbury and make a more significant contribution to the attractiveness of Shrewsbury as a tourist destination?
I'm going to ask the portfolio holder for transport, Steve Davenport, to respond. Steve, are you there?
Yes, hi. Yes, okay. Alternatives at a lower cost to building Relief Road have already been considered, including improvements to bus services, improvements to park and ride, improvements to walking, cycling networks, and demand management such as road pricing. However, the results showed that these means alone would not produce the benefits equal to those that could be achieved by building the North West Relief Road. And just to put a caveat in there, it's always about Shrewsbury. This is also about surrounding villages and keep them cleaner and greener, not just Shrewsbury. But back to my answer. These options are fully explored and measured in terms of effectiveness. Online business case of 2017 is available online, and that is there is a link with a website on there, which is www.shropshire.gov.uk media 8939. The funding from the Department of Transport, DFT, is only available to construct the North West Relief Road. The funding is not transferable to any other projects in Shropshire. Funding through this local transport plan and other sources will continue to be available to Shropshire and other transport projects. There are already works planned and the delivery in the town centre in order to increase the attractiveness of Shrewsbury and the tourist as a tourist destination. The Shrewsbury North West Relief Road will complement Shrewsbury and the integrated transport package CITIP, which we will introduce. Enhancements to the public realm, such as Pride Hill, Rose Hill and Mardle, and the improved pedestrian wayfinding within and around the River Loop to generate a highly accessible and connected town centre for pedestrians, together with the North West Relief Road and CITIP, will also support the delivery of the big town plan by removing and working around the opportunities presented by the removal of significant levels of traffic from the town centre. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, David. Again, if you want a quick response, and a follow-up,
yes,
available.
Thanks, Leader. Thank you. Just I wonder if the council would consider extending the current consultation period, because people have been more concerned about the coronavirus pandemic recently. And I mean, if the council doesn't do that, and I think you're much more likely to be subject to a challenge by judicial review for taking an unreasonable decision.
I'll come back on that. I think we have already extended the consultation once, and I don't think we intend to extend the consultation further, because when a planning application goes in, there will be a second round of consultation, and there is plenty of time in the timescale of this scheme to allow that to take place. So I think the public will have plenty of opportunity to be consulted and to make their views known when the planning application is submitted. So I think that will be a second round of consultation, which will in a way be more important than the first round. So I think the opportunity for the public to make their comments will be there. So I think that would be the response on that one. Moving on, there are questions three. There are two questions from Councillor Julian Dean. Julian, are you around?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so the first question.
Yeah.
At a recent place overview committee, there was an agreement that an offer from WSP to provide expertise on climate issues and transport would be pursued. Meanwhile, I'm concerned that there's no sign of development towards LTP4, which should provide an opportunity to shape appropriate transport development, despite plans for new housing and employment development areas being pursued through the local plan review. So the question is, when can we expect to see a draft LTP4? Will this make use of WSP climate related expertise? And will this be timed such that it supports sustainable and active transport solutions for additional housing and employment?
Again, I'm going to ask Councillor Steve Davenport to respond to this. Steve?
Yeah, OK. The development of the next local transport plan for Shropshire LTP4 is due to be recommended shortly, following the changes in the local and national context that we required to be incorporated. The rescoping process will include enhancing links to economic growth and to the local plan review and the local economic plans for each area. As we are incorporating Shropshire Council's aspirations in relation to tackling carbon emissions and climate change and the exploration of transport hubs and development train strategy and movement strategy for Shrewsbury, the review of park and ride services, the bids that are being submitted to the Department of Transport for a better deal for buses that will be submitted in the next month, the impact on cross-border working with the announcement of funding for the Pant-Llanymynech bypass, and development of the LTP4 will continue to be commissioned to Shropshire Council's engineering consultants WSP. And as such, an appropriate climate related expertise will be sought and used. From the point that the next stage of the commissioning commences, it is anticipated that the LTP will take just over 1 year to complete, due to fixed timescales and associated with some required elements, meeting the fast moving agenda in Shropshire's transport ambitions for the future.
Julian, I'll allow you a quick comeback if you've got a further question on that one.
Thank you very much. My only comment really is just in terms of confidence of leadership on this, given that we had two public questions earlier, both of which mentioned the need to look after pedestrians in the post as lockdown comes up, and the answers didn't mention pedestrians at all. They mentioned car parking. So I'm just a little bit concerned that we are on the ball with the way things are changing, which was also reflected in David's question. The situation is really changing rapidly, and we need to reflect that.
I take your point on that, and we will be discussing this permanently, constantly on the way forward, how we can deal with this. And obviously, it's not just how we see it as the council, it's the general public taking control for themselves with our help, of course, but it's we're in a new era, clearly. Okay,
we move on. So Julian, you've got a second question. Would you like to do a second question?
Yes, thank you. So the Centre for Public Scrutiny recommends that scrutiny functions remain critical but have a new role during the COVID-19 emergency. They mention in particular the need for continued scrutiny regarding social care, especially given the easements provided by government, the effectiveness of the various levels of collaborative working to face the emergency and protecting vulnerable children. What plans are there for a slimmed down but still rigorous and public scrutiny process?
Right. Now, as an administration, we're not supposed to try and control scrutiny in any way, but there is a response from Councillor Claire Wilde, but I have to read it because she's not a member of Cabinet. So the response is as follows. Following the changes to legislation enabling meetings to take place virtually, proposals are being developed for overview and scrutiny at Shropshire Council, taking an account of the suggestions made by the Centre for Public Scrutiny on how overview and scrutiny could operate as the Council works remotely. It is expected that the number of meetings will be reduced as part of the slimming down to assist with managing demands on officer time and partner time. There will be the opportunity to complete work already underway by existing task and finish groups, as well as topics previously identified in work programmes, and the opportunity to identify topics in light of COVID-19. The proposals are being brought forward for consideration, and following this, they will be implemented. Right, Julian?
Yes, thank you for that. That's reassuring, and I think the number of detailed questions that have come forward to this Cabinet do point to the need to have the opportunity to scrutinise at an officer level as well. So thank you for that.
Right, so we move on. Question 4 is from Roger Evans. Roger?
Thank you, Peter. Yep, my first question I'll read out, and it concerns finances, and I'll update the figures as I go through because I see that the government have published updated figures in the last couple of days. I note in a recent press release sent out by Shropshire Council, it states that of the £91 million received by the council was 42, but now it's £50 million, or 55% has been distributed to 4,319 businesses. Given the small team of 6 looking after this, and I'm sure all of us would wish to congratulate them on this achievement. However, there remains at this updated figure £42 million in our bank account still to be given out to businesses, many of whom are in desperate straits, especially as the month end approaches. Are there plans to increase the number of staff working in this area so that all those entitled to receive grants can receive them in the next few days?
Right, so that part of the question I'm going to ask Councillor David Minery to respond to. David, are you there?
Yes, Leader, thank you. I'm here, and good morning, Roger, and thank you for your question. But before I deal with the precise answer, I would actually like to update the information even further, because the figures on that particular website are by now out of date. As people can imagine, this is a rapidly changing situation. So these figures are as of yesterday, the 28th of April. So we have received 7,080 applications and paid out to 4,544 of those, which is over 64%. The value of grant now remaining is potentially misleading, but based on the applications received, the maximum amount of grant still to be paid out is now 34.5 million. So slightly less than the figure that you mentioned, Roger, and not the 49 million quoted in the question. That 34.5 million assumes that all retail, hospitality and leisure grants are paid at £25,000, when in reality some will be at the lower figure of 10,000. A surplus or shortfall in the grant will be reconciled at a future point. Nevertheless, the question is still valid, and in that although 4,544 businesses have been paid, that which puts us in the top 20 in the country, 36%, or 2,536, have not yet received their grant. The majority of these businesses have been contacted to provide outstanding information, and payment is dependent on receiving and validating that information. Some will not be eligible, and they will be contacted to confirm this over the next few weeks, and the focus is on the remainder who are eligible and have provided all the necessary information. Our objective remains to pay out these grants as soon as we possibly can,
with the majority that are outstanding dealt with before the end of this week. Additional resources have been made available internally to manage the process. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Roger, any quick comeback on that one?
A quick one. Congratulations, David, and the staff for doing that, because on the government website that's just been published, the position of Shropshire on the website has actually fallen from 210 to 251, 251st place out of the 300. Given that information, I would assume that we're going up, especially when you look at Cornwall, which is over 71%, Telford-and-Wrekin at 87%, and Herefordshire at 62. So we're equivalent to what Hereford was doing earlier on this week. So there is some rapidness needed in this to get that money out to where it is really wanted. Thank you.
Okay, now Roger, you've got a second question. Would you like to do your second question?
Yeah. Our schools.
Peter, before, sorry,
okay,
can I just respond to that, please? I'm taking that as a supplementary question. And I'll be very brief. But yes, Roger, you're quite right. That's what the government website says. But as I said in my introduction, their figures are not up to date. I think our staff, and I thank you for your congratulations. I'm sure they'll be delighted to know that their hard work is being supported. But their priority is dealing with the applications and not telling the government what we're doing, quite frankly. So if we appear to be a bit down the table on that list, please be assured that's not the reality. The reality is, as I gave you in my first part of my response. Thank you.
Okay, right. So, Roger, schools.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. Question is, schools remain closed except for certain categories of children. They also, of course, remained open over the Easter break. Our thanks go to all those staff who gave up their holidays to look after those children and so enabled their parents to continue working and caring for those in need. However, extra unplanned costs have and are being incurred by schools, many of which were already planning to spend all their budget providing the education our children need. Is Shropshire Council planning to help these schools who are likely to overspend their budget, or will they be forced into making some staff redundant?
I'm going to ask the portfolio holder for Children's Services, Ed Potter, to respond. Councillor Ed Potter.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Evans, for your question. In response, the government has confirmed that schools will continue to receive their core funding allocation for 2020 to 2021 financial year. This will happen regardless of any periods of partial or complete closure and will ensure schools can continue to pay staff and meet their regular financial commitments. Local authorities will continue to receive their high needs budget and will continue to pay top-up and other high needs funding to schools. This will ensure that the employment and payment of staff supporting pupils with special educational needs and disabilities can continue. The government has also identified areas in which they understand schools may face additional costs as a result of the COVID-19 outbreak, namely increased additional premise-related costs associated with keeping schools open during Easter and/or summer half-term, support for free school meals for eligible children who are not attending school where these are not covered by the Free School Meal National Voucher Scheme, additional cleaning required due to confirmed or suspected COVID-19 cases. The following limits have been set for schools claiming these additional costs, which you'll receive these afterwards, but for mainstream schools, 250 pupils or fewer, £25,000, 251 to 500, 30,000, 501 to 1,000 pupils, 50,000, over 1,000 pupils, 75,000, and special schools and alternative provision, which is all of those in that category, is 50,000. The one area that schools have identified as an issue in the respect of what is referred to as private income, which includes income from paid schools meals, lettings, breakfasts and after school clubs, with these services either reduced or ceased, schools could face a shortfall in income over the financial year. Schools are being directed towards the coronavirus job retention scheme for furloughed staff. They are, however, expected to exhaust all options to meet costs from existing budgets or redeployments before seeking support from this scheme. With all these measures in place, the risks to schools overspending in the current year are significantly reduced. While there is no expectation that schools will have to make staff redundant as a direct consequence of COVID-19, Council Education and Finance officers will work closely with schools to carefully monitor the position as the sector comes out of the lockdown, and we are happy to engage with members who have concerns about specific maintained schools.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Potter. Roger, any response?
Only a quick one. Thanks, Ed, for the extra information. It will be useful and I think it will be appreciated by the schools. But I note that Shropshire Council, as the main employer, is asking for details from schools, and Shropshire Council will be making a decision on the 7th of May whether to pursue anything with government. Concerns me that the schools are incurring costs now. Decisions may well have to be made before then as to what happens. But Shropshire Council can only make one application on behalf of all the schools and all the staff. That's all that's permitted. So, and I do have a meeting this afternoon with certain officers to discuss it further. But yeah, there is concern about what is happening. But thank you for the extra information you have given.
Councillor Potter, Ed, do you want to respond at all?
Yeah, I can only suggest Roger does speak with the relevant officers who will be able to assist on specific queries you have with individual schools, because every school situation will be different. And likewise, to any other members who have any concerns, please do engage with the relevant officers or through myself, and I can point you in the right direction to ensure that schools get all the support that they need.
Okay, right, thank you. Moving on. Questions 5 from Councillor Rees Houghton. There are 2 questions. Can I ask you to combine the 2 together, and I'll get Dean Carroll to respond together. So Ruth, are you there?
Yes, Chair, thank you. And the 2 questions are, how many deaths have there been from COVID-19 in Shropshire care homes? And of this number, how many have there been in nursing homes and residential homes? And linked to that, how many have been amongst older people over 65 years old? And then secondly, with younger adults with learning disabilities, physical disabilities or mental health needs? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask Councillor Dean Carroll to respond. Dean, are you there?
Yep, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep. Carry on.
Okay. Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Ruth, for the question. With regard to publishing local authority figures for deaths from COVID-19 in care homes into the public domain, we follow national guidance and best practice on this. Figures on care homes are released by the Office for National Statistics and the Care Quality Commission, CQC, whose responsibility it is to collate all the data on all deaths and validate data. By signposting and referring to nationally produced data, to ensure we have an accurate reflection of all current deaths in Shropshire, including those in care homes and community settings. This is available as of the 28th of April at a local authority level. I do have a link here which will be sent to you. It's rather a long link, but it will be included in the response that's sent to you and published on the website, so I won't read out the full link. This data confirms the deaths in numbers by local authority and cause of death for deaths that occurred up to the 17th of April but were registered up to the 25th of April. England and Wales, including deaths involving the COVID-19, was 15 in a care home setting, with 60 total COVID deaths recorded across all settings. A further breakdown by age is not provided. In addition, CQC data on the 28th of April for the number of deaths involving COVID-19 occurring in care homes by local authority and day of notification between the 10th and 24th of April shows 21 provisional deaths counted in Shropshire care homes and a total of 68 deaths recorded. For specific inquiries on local data, please contact the ONS that's the Office of National Statistics Press Office, who continue to handle inquiries and will update media if and when we get more detailed breakdowns.
Okay, thank you, Dean. Ruth?